I'm John Green, this is Crash Course U.S. History, and today we're going to talk about the 1960s and JFK's presidency. The presidential election of 1960 marked a big change in politics with the first televised debates. The candidates, John F. Kennedy and Richard Nixon, spent millions on TV advertisements. People called the candidates packaged products and even said that the processed politician has arrived. Kennedy and Nixon differed in many ways. Kennedy was seen as outgoing and relaxed, while Nixon was a little uptight. Though the candidates were different personality-wise, they differed little on key issues. As the election came to a close, Kennedy won, but it was a narrow victory. Kennedy had a bunch of achievements. He focused on expanding women's rights by creating the Presidential Commission on the Status of Women and the Equal Pay Act. Kennedy also focused on the disabled by funding programs that researched developmental disabilities and educational programs. The president's sister was a big supporter of helping disabled children and even created the Special Olympic Games. Kennedy pushed for a buildup of troops and conventional weapons to resist communist movements because the Cold War was still very much happening. Then he started focusing on Latin America and other developing nations fight poverty and created the Peace Corps, which sent Americans to provide humanitarian services. A huge part of the Cold War, my favorite part of the Cold War and the 1960s, is the space race. After a Soviet astronaut was the first person to orbit Earth and the Sputnik was launched, Kennedy became so worried that people would start to think communism is better than capitalism that he went before Congress and created a massive effort to start getting the technology necessary to put a man on the moon. 6 years later, the Apollo was sent into orbit and Neil Armstrong, Edwin Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins were sent to the moon. Though Kennedy was never able to see this. He was shot twice as the presidential motorcade rode through Dallas with his wife. Lee Harvey Oswald was accused of killing the president and shot while in police custody. There are many theories and conspiracies surrounding his assassination, but I won't start talking about them for all of your sake. Lyndon Johnson became president following Kennedy's assassination, and he was determined to promote many of the programs that Kennedy left unfinished. Johnson started a war on poverty as he's seen these issues firsthand. Johnson had many programs passed that helped younger inner-city Americans. Johnson won the public's approval, which led him to winning the next election against Barry Goldwater. Johnson soon began creating the Great Society he promised in his campaign. This resulted in several new programs that passed that improved the lives of all Americans, like Medicare and Medicaid. But most importantly, major civil rights goals were accomplished. The Civil Rights Act of 1964 barred discrimination of many kinds, and the Voting Rights Act of 1965 protected voters from discriminatory practices. After Johnson left office, people started questioning whether or not the Great Society was actually a huge success. Some programs didn't work out as well as hoped, and others grew so quickly they became unmanageable and difficult to evaluate. But the programs did provide some important benefits to poor communities and helped minorities. Johnson was determined to change America, a change only a few other presidents had attempted. I'm John Green. This was Crash Course U.S. History. Thanks for watching.
Kennedy, 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 Kennedy. Do you want a man for president?
Nothing bad ever happens to the Kennedys!